Always a pleasure to be joined by Stephen Ellis. Season debut as we take a look at this year's rookie class in the NHL, and it's a really interesting one, Stephen. I want to start at the top, though. The odds-on favorite for the Calder Trophy, a guy who made a big buzz when he arrived in North America late last season. It's Ivan Demidov. It's basically him versus the field, but I want to circle in on him. What's his ceiling? Like, are we talking about a guy who can be a 70-point player this year?
I think, 60 points probably feels a bit safe. He's not going to be on that top line unless there's a bit of injuries there. And you got to look at who he's playing with. Is it going to be Kirby Dach? Is it going to be Patrick Laine? Well, those are two guys who are going to need a bounce back season themselves. But I think with Demidov, this is a guy with a bright future. And you look at all the teams that win Stanley Cups, and they have more than one really strong offensive line. You throw Demidov in the picture there for Montreal, that's going to be one heck of a group. So I think 60 points probably feels good this year. I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about a 95-point guy 2-3 years down the line, but I think that they're going to give him a lot of opportunities here to be a dominant offensive force, just like he was in the KHL, hopefully without playing like the 5 or 6 minutes he played very often there.
Yeah, and I think for him, he's going to have to add some slash guards on there because he's going to have to get used to the NHL and things getting a little tougher on him. But, I touched on Dustin Wolf earlier, and we saw how good he was. He was in that Calder chase last year. The guy for me this year is Jet Greaves in Columbus. He's a smaller goalie. He's very similar. Do you think he can make that jump and really be in the hunt this year to try to help this team and be in the Calder talk?
I think so. You look at Greaves and you look at the numbers last year in the NHL. He played so well, but that was kind of what we expected from him to a point, because you look at him in Barrie, you look at him in the AHL and ECHL. He was always putting up really good numbers despite playing on poor teams. And I think you look at the athleticism out there, the way that he's able to go out there and challenge shooters. When you're a smaller goalie, you got to do a couple things different. And one of those things is making sure you're keeping that glove up at all times. You're taking away the top in the net. And I feel like he's always done that so well. And it's funny, I've talked to some younger goalies and like guys in the OHL now, like what's one goalie you like to look at? And a lot of people say Jet Greaves. And given he hasn't been a full-time NHLer, it's interesting, but because he does so much with his smaller frame and he does take a lot of that net up, he's always keeping his shoulders active. He's moving very quickly. This is a guy I think that should be a starting goalie in the NHL. And given that Elvis Merzlikins just hasn't been able to figure it out, I think Jet Greaves is going to make a lot of noise this year.
Yeah, and I think Dean Evansson will reward him, right? He's a guy that wants to win. He demands a lot. I got to know him a little bit when I played in Nashville. And, now when we look at this year, the Calder guys, who legit has a chance to win the Calder, right? We talked about Demidov. You talked about Greaves. Who else is there? There are many players that have an authentic chance to try to win this trophy this year.
Yeah, I'd say I'm looking at probably 4. And I'm looking at Ivan Demidov, obviously. He's the huge offensive threat. Then you look at last year, and Lane Hudson was kind of the only defenseman of note. This year, that's going to be a much different. Carolina's Alexander Nikishin, Zeev Buium, you've got Calgary's Zane Parekh. So I think all of them are going to be in the fight here for different reasons. You look at Nikishin, he's 23 years old. He was dominant in the KHL. It's going to be a different situation for him coming over to the NHL, but older rookies typically do very well in the Calder fight here. Like, you're not looking at guys who are like Macklin Celebrini didn't win it last year after going first overall. Lane Hudson had already been drafted. He had already played the extra year in the NCAA before turning pro. So I think you're looking at these older guys like Nikishin. You're looking at someone like Zeev Buium, who was so impactful in college, unbelievable at Denver, a huge reason why they won the championship 2 years ago. And then Zane Parekh. Like, this is a guy that very soon you're going to be seeing a lot of Zane Parekh jerseys in Calgary, because he's a rock star. He's a guy that's just so much fun to watch. So I'd say those are the 4 I'm looking at as the true Calder candidates. But it is a deep group, because that doesn't include Matthew Schaefer, doesn't include Jimmy Snuggerud, Askarov, Leonard. Like, there's a lot of really good names this year.
I want to talk a bit more about the names from the 2025 class, because again, it's interesting. Demidov, Snuggerud, Buium, like, these are guys, and you can look at that list there on the screen. It's a lot of guys who have been, playing in Russia, playing in the minors the last couple of years. But what about these like true rookies coming out of the draft class? Like, why aren't we talking a bit more about Schaefer?
I think with Schaefer, you look at some of the preseason games, and it is preseason. You can only take so much of that out of it, and you could say, okay, with him still going to catch up to the playing pace after missing all but about 30 games if you count preseason and exhibition games and everything he did in the OHL and the World Juniors last year. So he did not play a lot of hockey. He's doing some catch up here. But with the Islanders, especially with Noah Dobson gone, we do expect Matthew Schaefer to get a lot of opportunities to play in the power play. And I do think it will take a bit of time for him to figure out, but he is going to figure out. Like, he's ready for the NHL. You look at Michael Misa. I think in San Jose, a lot of people were saying, like, oh, maybe, like myself included, maybe he's that third line center to start the year with Will Smith at number 2 and Celebrini at number 1. But it looks like Celebrini and Smith are going to play together, and that opens up a lot of opportunities for Misa. Will that last? That's a good question, because I know it feels like there was a lot of talk last year about keeping Smith as a center to get better as a centerman in the NHL, and maybe they revert to that at some point. But at least out of the gate, it looks like Misa is going to get a lot of opportunities. Will that last? I don't know, but it doesn't matter what you do in junior. The NHL is still a different animal here. You could put up 140, 150 points in the OHL, but you're not going to be playing against the same competition the minute you get to the NHL, especially when you're on a team like the San Jose Sharks. So I expect some learning curves for those guys, but they're very skilled, and I feel super highly about them. If they were doing the Calder next year, different story. They'd be competing against Gavin McKenna, but I feel like they'd have a better fight.
Gavin McKenna, that's a nice little segue to my last question. He's set to make his NCAA debut tomorrow for Penn State, taking on ASU this weekend in a back-to-back set. What's Gavin McKenna going to do at the NCAA level? I mean, he was already too good for the CHL, the WHL. Is he going to be just stepping into the NCAA and already too good for that level too?
It's definitely an interesting question because, yeah, he dominated the WHL, but it is tough for a 17-year-old turning 18 to go and put up a lot of points in the NCAA. But he's going to be playing with someone like Aiden Fink, who was one of the most productive players in college the last couple of seasons. That's a really good player to lean on. You look at Penn State. I don't think they're going to be a national champion this year because they are a very young team. A lot of the guys they're relying on are, in this case, 17, 18, or 19. When you look at the top teams, they're typically the 19, 20, 21-year-olds. But he's going to play pretty much every situation for them. He's so skilled. He's got a great scoring touch, but he also just has all these pro-level attributes already to his game, his work ethic, the way he battles, the way he thinks the game. Like, there's so many high-end elements to his game where you look at the most recent freshman seasons out of college stars and you look at what Celebrini was able to do a couple years ago. I think we're looking at McKenna like 60, 70 points this year should be what he's able to do. And I do think he will be in the Hobie Baker conversation. I can't wait to watch him play on Friday.
All right, Stephen Ellis, Calder rankings coming out next week, coverage throughout the year in the prospect world. No one does it better. Appreciate you popping on, Stephen.
Go Blue Jays.
Yes. Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.